Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going deep into the world of personal productivity and how to escape that feeling of being overwhelmed by all the stuff of life.
Sounds familiar.
Oh, absolutely. Our guide for this journey is David Allen's Getting Things Done, a book that's become a bit of a Bible for, well, getting things done.
It's a classic for a reason. Alan really nails the core issue. It's not just about having a lot on your plate, it's how all those unfinished tasks and ideas take up space in our minds.
Yeah, those open loops, they can really weigh you down.
Exactly. Alan calls these incompletions, and they're the root cause of a lot of stress. It's that email you haven't replied to, or that project you keep pushing back, or even that random idea for, I don't know, reorganizing your entire kitchen that pops up when you're trying to fall asleep.
Oh, tell me about it. My brain sometimes feels like a web browser with way too many tabs open.
Yeah.
Alan's whole idea of achieving a mind like water really resonated with me.
Beautiful analogy, right?
It is. That sense of calm and effortless response to anything life throws at you.
Exactly. And the first step to achieving that is surprisingly simple, but often overlooked: capture everything.
Everything. Like write down every single thought that flits through my mind.
You got it. It's like a mental decluttering, a mind sweep, if you will, getting everything out of your head and onto paper or into a trusted system.
I remember feeling so silly the first time I did a mind sweep. It's amazing what we store up there without even realizing it. I had a note to myself about researching the history of get this garden gnomes.
Haha, that's great. But that's the point, isn't it? It highlights how much mental RAM we're using up on things that might not even be important.
So true. But simply writing everything down isn't enough, right? We need to actually do something with all this captured stuff.
You're absolutely right. That's where we go beyond the basic to-do list and start making decisions about these captured items. Can we toss it, delegate it, file it away for later?
So it's not just about reacting to this mental whirlwind. It's about taking control and making conscious choices about what we allow to occupy our mental space.
Exactly. And that's where Allen's concept of actionable versus non-actionable items comes into play. If it requires action, we need to define the very next physical step required to move it forward. He calls this the next action.
This was a game changer for me. I had fix leaky faucet on my list forever, and it felt so overwhelming. But once I broke it down into search for plumbers online, it suddenly felt manageable. And guess what? I actually did it.
That's the magic of the next action. It eliminates that ambiguity, that feeling of being stuck because you don't know where to start. It turns a vague intention into a concrete, achievable step.
Speaking of concrete steps, there's Allen's famous 2-minute rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately.
It seems almost too simple, right?
I know, I thought so too. But I've realized it prevents those tiny tasks from piling up and creating mental clutter.
Think of it this way. Those quick wins give you a sense of accomplishment and momentum. It's like clearing your mental cache, freeing up space for more important things. So how many of those little tasks could our listeners knock out right now, just by applying that rule? Probably more than they realize.
Definitely. Now think about this. Allen also talks about the importance of context. It's not just about what you need to do, but about being realistic about what you can actually accomplish in a given moment.
Context, huh? So it's about aligning our actions with our current environment tools and even our energy levels.
You got it. Let's say you're stuck in traffic with only your phone. Instead of stressing about that big presentation due tomorrow, why not make a few quick calls from your calls list? You're using your limited context effectively.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not about forcing ourselves into some rigid system, but working with our reality.
Exactly. And that brings us to Allen's concept of natural planning. It's about aligning with our natural flow of thinking.
Instead of those rigid top-down to-do lists, this sounds much more organic. How does that work in practice?
It all starts with clarifying the purpose of what you're trying to achieve. Imagine building a house. You wouldn't just start laying bricks without a blueprint, right? Definitely not.
So natural planning is like creating that blueprint for your projects. It's about envisioning the outcome you want, brainstorming ideas freely, and then organizing those ideas into actionable steps.
So instead of feeling restricted by a predetermined plan, we're actually allowing those aha moments to emerge organically.
Exactly. It's about tapping into your own problem-solving abilities. Now even the best laid plans need regular maintenance, which brings us to the weekly review.
Okay, the weekly review. Full disclosure, I used to resist this. It felt like just another chore on an already long list. But I've come to realize it's not about being perfect, but about staying engaged with your system.
Think of it as a mental decluttering session, capturing any new stuff that's come up, reassessing existing commitments, making sure everything is organized and aligned with your current priorities.
It's like hitting the refresh button on your whole workflow.
Mm.
And you know what? Once I started doing it consistently,
Mhm.
my stress levels actually went down.
That's the goal. It's about consciously choosing what you are not doing just as much as what you are doing. That proactive approach helps you feel more in control rather than constantly reacting to everything.
That makes a lot of sense. It's that relaxed control we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
Now, beyond the mental aspects, Alan also emphasizes the importance of our physical environment.
Absolutely. Your physical space can either support or sabotage your efforts. A cluttered desk, a chaotic inbox, these things create a subtle but constant energy drain.
Ugh, I know that feeling all too well. I used to be the queen of clutter piles of papers everywhere. But after reading Getting Things Done, I did a complete workspace overhaul.
And how did that feel?
Honestly, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Mm.
Just having a clear surface to work on makes a huge difference.
It's about creating an environment that reflects the mental clarity you're striving for, a space that makes it easy to capture, process, and organize your stuff.
Speaking of stuff, Alan also talks about having the right tools to support your workflow, both physical and digital.
Right. And this doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. It's about finding what works best for you. Some people thrive with a simple notebook and pen. Others prefer a sophisticated digital task manager. The key is to have a system you trust and that you'll actually use consistently.
I've definitely gone through phases of trying different tools. I found what works best for me is actually a combination of both digital calendar for appointments, a physical notebook for brainstorming, and a simple filing system for reference materials.
There you go. It's a customizable framework, not a rigid set of rules. It's all about adapting it to your own individual needs and preferences. And don't forget those regular reviews at different altitudes, as Alan calls them.
Right. He talks about the 50,000-foot view, the 40,000-foot view, and so on. Zooming out to check in with the bigger picture, your values, your long-term goals, your overall direction in life.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of why you're doing all of this in the first place.
Absolutely. And sometimes those negative feelings we have about all our stuff
Mm-hmm.
stem from broken agreements with ourselves.
Oh, that's a good point. It's like that nagging guilt when we promise ourselves we'll do something and then we keep putting it off. We make these commitments. I'll finish that project by Friday. I'll spend more time with my family. And then life happens and we end up feeling like we've let ourselves down.
It can be a vicious cycle, so how do we break free from that?
Alan suggests we have three choices: renegotiate the agreement, fulfill it, or just don't make it in the first place.
So instead of beating ourselves up for not cleaning out that closet,
Yeah.
we can create a realistic plan to tackle one shelf this week.
Exactly. Or decide it's not a priority right now and let go of the guilt completely. That's where the someday maybe list can be helpful. It's a place to park those projects or ideas that you're not ready to act on just yet but don't want to completely forget about.
Like giving ourselves permission to dream without feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to act right now.
You got it. Now remember, these principles aren't just limited to personal productivity. Alan talks about applying them to teams and organizations as well.
Makes sense. A lack of clarity in a team can lead to all sorts of problems.
Absolutely. Bottlenecks, miscommunication, a culture of reactivity. It's like everyone's running around putting out fires instead of working strategically towards a common goal.
So if everyone on the team is clear about their next actions and how those contribute to the bigger picture, it creates a more proactive and collaborative environment.
Precisely. Now, here's a really interesting point. Alan suggests that our best thinking often happens outside our normal work environment. He encourages making time for reflection, letting our minds wander.
That's so true. I often get my most creative ideas when I'm not actively trying to work during a walk or just zoning out in the shower.
Exactly. It's like our subconscious mind is working on those problems in the background, and then boom, inspiration strikes.
It's like giving ourselves permission to daydream, to tap into those unexpected bursts of insight.
And remember, we don't have an infinite supply of willpower and focus. We need to manage our energy levels too.
Oh, that's huge. In our always-on culture, it's so easy to burn out trying to do everything at once.
Exactly. Alan suggests aligning tasks with your energy levels, feeling drained. Maybe skip that complex project and tackle something from your low energy list, like replying to emails or organizing files.
It's about working with our natural ebb and flow of energy, not against it.
Exactly. And this leads into another area where people often get stuck, keeping track of all the things they're waiting on from other people.
Oh my gosh, the waiting for list. That used to cause me so much anxiety.
It's a mental clutter magnet, right? Creating a dedicated space for those items can be a game changer. It allows you to let go of that mental burden of constantly remembering them. Then, during your weekly review, you can easily check that list and follow up on anything that's overdue.
It's amazing how much lighter I feel once I started doing that. Now, Alan also encourages us to think beyond just managing tasks and to consider our broader areas of responsibility.
He talks about defining our work not just by our job title, but by our roles and commitments in all areas of life: family, community, personal growth. It's a much more holistic perspective.
It's like that concept of work-life balance, but with a more practical framework for actually achieving it.
Precisely. It's not about compartmentalizing, but about finding a sense of harmony and integration between all those different aspects of our lives. And something that really stuck with me is his idea that our work is never truly done.
There's always more to do.
Always. More to learn, more to create. It's a shift from a mindset of getting things done to being engaged.
Wow, that's a really profound shift. But how do we maintain that sense of engagement without feeling overwhelmed by all the possibilities?
That's where flexibility comes in. In today's world, things are constantly changing, so clinging to rigid plans can really backfire. It's about being willing to adjust, to pivot when necessary, to embrace the unexpected twists and turns.
So it's about letting go of the illusion of control, recognizing that we can't predict or plan for everything.
Exactly. And sometimes those unexpected detours lead to our greatest learning experiences and opportunities. Think about a time when you were forced to step outside your comfort zone, to improvise and adapt. It's often in those moments that we discover hidden strengths and resourcefulness we didn't even know we had.
That's so true. And those challenges often push us to grow in ways we never imagined. But sometimes those challenges can feel insurmountable if we're trying to do everything alone. Alan also talks about the importance of delegation, recognizing that we don't have to shoulder everything ourselves.
Delegation is an art form. It's about knowing when to leverage the skills and talents of others, understanding that we can achieve more collectively. But I know for many people, myself included, letting go of that control can be tough.
I used to think it was easier to just do everything myself, but that's a recipe for burnout, and it prevents others from contributing their unique talents.
It's about learning to trust, to empower others to step up and shine. And that creates a much more collaborative and fulfilling environment for everyone involved. All right, so let's give our listeners that top 10 takeaway list to help them put all this into practice.
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, number 1. Capture everything. That brain dump, that mind sweep, it's all about getting those swirling thoughts out of your head and into a trusted system.
Okay, that's number 1. Number 2.
For each item you capture, ask yourself, what's the very next physical action I need to take? Just one thing. What's the first step?
Love it. Number 3.
Context is king. Don't try to tackle a complex project when you only have 5 minutes and you're stuck in a waiting room. Match your actions to your current environment, tools, and energy level.
Right. Work smarter, not harder. Okay, number 4.
Ah, yes, the 2-minute rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes, just do it now.
Done. What's next?
Number 5, schedule that weekly review. It's like a mental tune-up, making sure everything is still running smoothly.
Number 6.
Don't forget the someday maybe list. That's where you park those big dreams or projects you're not ready for yet so they don't clog up your mental space.
Ooh, I like that. It takes the pressure off. Okay, what's number 7?
Be honest with yourself. If a task has been hanging around for too long, maybe it's time to renegotiate, delegate, or even just let it go completely.
Let it go. Number 8.
Your workspace matters. Create an environment that supports a clear and focused mind. Clutter creates chaos.
So true. Okay, number 9.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Experiment with different tools and systems, digital, physical, whatever works best for you.
Find what you love and use it.
Mm.
All right, we're on the last one. Number 10.
Remember, this is a journey, not a sprint to the finish line. Celebrate your progress. Be kind to yourself when you stumble and enjoy the process.
Beautifully said. It's not about becoming a productivity robot. It's about creating a life that feels good. Well, we covered a lot of ground today, from capturing those nagging incompletions to defining next actions and embracing those weekly reviews. It feels like a real roadmap to achieving that mind-like water state we talked about.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. Life is messy. So be flexible, be adaptable, and most importantly, be kind to yourself.
We hope this deep dive into getting things done has given you some helpful tools to reclaim control of your stuff so you can focus on what truly matters.
So go out there and conquer those to-dos. But more importantly, go out and live a life that feels aligned, intentional, and fulfilling.
And until next time, May your mind be clear, your actions purposeful, and your spirit light.